The sound of gunfire echoed across the dusty training range, sharp cracks splitting the cool morning air. Shell casings bounced and spun on the concrete floor, glinting in the rising sun. Most shooters came here for sport, for stress relief, or to prove something to themselves. But for Claire Jennings, it was different. She wasn't military. She wasn't law enforcement. She was a high school teacher from a small town in Montana. Her days were filled with chalk dust, grading essays, and calming restless teenagers. But every Saturday morning, when the world was quiet, she drove 45 minutes to the outdoor range. Here, she wasn't Ms. Jennings. She wasn't the one telling kids to stop throwing paper airplanes. Here, she was just Claire, a woman who needed silence, discipline, and focus. She set her rifle on the bench, breathing deeply before leaning into the scope. She wasn't flashy, wasn't competitive. She shot for precision, for patience. Each pull of the trigger was slow, deliberate. A meditation disguised as recoil. What no one knew was that this ritual wasn't born from hobby, it was born from grief. Claire's brother, Danny, had been a Navy SEAL. The kind who rarely talked about his missions, the kind who laughed easily but carried a weight in his eyes that words couldn't release. 2 years ago, she had gotten the call. A training accident. He was gone. Just like that. Danny had been the one to first put a rifle in her hands, years earlier, back when they were teenagers on their family's farm. Breath steady, he'd tell her. Don't fight the trigger. Just let it surprise you. He used to joke that she had steadier hands than half his squad. She always rolled her eyes. Now, she heard his voice every time she lined up a shot. That morning, Claire was alone at the far end of the range. The other shooters had left, their chatter fading. She was working on a distant target, a steel plate so far away that most people ignored it. Her breathing slowed, her fingers squeezed. The plate pinged, a faint echo across the field. Another shot, another ping. She lost track of time, locked into rhythm, the world narrowing to nothing but scope, breath, trigger. When she finally looked up, she froze. Standing a few yards behind her, silently watching, was a man in desert camo and a ball cap pulled low. His posture was unmistakable. Broad shoulders, disciplined stance, still as a stone. His gaze was sharp, evaluating, but not unkind. She knew the type instantly. Military. Claire tensed. Had she done something wrong? Civilians weren't always welcomed in spaces frequented by operators or veterans. She cleared her throat, setting the rifle down carefully. Sorry, she said quickly. Was I not supposed to use that target? The man didn't answer. Instead, he stepped closer, scanning the hits on the distant plate. His eyes narrowed slightly, then softened. For a long moment, he just studied her. Then, without a word, he raised his hand, 2 fingers to his brow, crisp and deliberate. A salute. Claire blinked, her breath catching. No one had ever saluted her. It was a gesture reserved for honor, for recognition among those who wore the uniform. And here she was, a civilian with chalk-stained hands, staring as a Navy SEAL commander lowered his hand respectfully. Sir, she whispered, unsure. He finally spoke, his voice low, steady. Where'd you learn to shoot like that? Her throat tightened. She wanted to shrug it off, pretend it was nothing, but the truth pressed out of her. My brother. He was one of you. The commander studied her face, then nodded, as if confirming something unspoken. What was his name? Danny Jennings. Her voice cracked as she said it. For the first time, the commander's rigid composure shifted. His jaw clenched, and his eyes darkened, not with suspicion, but recognition. He exhaled slowly, shaking his head in disbelief. Jennings. Danny Jennings. Claire's heart skipped. You knew him. The commander looked past her, toward the horizon, as though replaying memories only he could see. Knew him. He saved my life. Twice. Back in Helmand, and again in Syria. He was one of the best. His voice grew softer. We all felt it when we lost him. Tears blurred Claire's vision. She pressed her hand to her mouth, overwhelmed by the sudden collision of worlds. Here, in the silence of the range, stood a man who had fought beside her brother. Someone who carried the same weight, the same unspoken grief. The commander stepped closer, lowering his voice. When I saw you shoot, for a second, it was like watching him again. Same patience, same calm. That salute wasn't for you alone. It was for him, too. Claire swallowed hard, her chest aching. For so long, she had felt like her quiet ritual at the range was hers alone, a way of keeping Danny close. She never thought anyone else would see it, would recognize him in her. The commander's gaze softened further. Do you come out here often? Every week, she admitted. It's the only way I still feel connected to him. The man nodded slowly, then reached into his pocket. He pulled out a small, worn challenge coin, the kind seals carried, a symbol of belonging, of brotherhood. He placed it gently on the bench beside her rifle. That was Danny's, he said quietly. He gave it to me the night before our last mission together. Said, if I don't make it, pass this to someone who'll carry it with meaning. I've held on to it ever since. But I think, he meant it for you. Claire stared at the coin, her hands trembling. The weight of it felt heavier than any metal, heavier than any words. She picked it up slowly, pressing it to her chest as tears rolled freely now. Thank you, she whispered. The commander gave a small nod, his expression unreadable yet filled with respect. No, thank you, for keeping his spirit alive. For a long moment, they stood in silence, the morning air wrapping around them. Two strangers bound by one man's memory, finding connection where neither expected it. When the commander finally turned to leave, he stopped halfway, glancing back once more. Keep practicing, he said softly. The world needs more hands like yours. And with that, he walked away, leaving Claire standing at the bench, the challenge coin pressed against her heart, the sound of distant echoes still ringing in her ears. She lifted her rifle again, steadier than ever before. This time, when she looked through the scope, she didn't just hear her brother's voice, she felt his presence beside her. The steel plate sang with every shot, and for the first time in years, she didn't feel alone.